Welcome everybody to the Liron Glickman Show, the show that touches the human component in business and marketing. And for this Women's Month special, I'm so excited to have Amy Margolies and Shari Weinbach. How are you, ladies?
Hi, I'm excited to be here.
Hello.
Very excited to talk to this group.
Same as me and same as those who joined us. So I just want everybody here to know that these women's work and worked in the biggest companies in the world, and their work actually has been impacting companies, people, and us included. And that's why I'm so excited to have this chance to pick their brain, if I can say, and learn from senior sales Wonder Women, as I call them. So today, you, the audience, I want you to ask questions. You have the chat, you have the question tabs. Feel free to ask them questions. And before we dive in, just a few thanks and introductions. So this interview is held together with Women in Business Community, which is a community that ensures women in the field of marketing and business development have a safe community to network and to share information. Thanks so much to Einab Finkelstein, Hilat Chechik, Noam Shaked, and Ellen Golders. Thanks so much to Adam Kaplan, the Managing Director of Cellular Attitude and the author of the Anti-Sales Manifesto book that supports this event. We need one man at least, right? And I'm Liron Glickman, a global business development consultant. I work with startups. We're doing global speaking, and this is one of the most amazing things I get to do, which is interview amazing and inspiring women. And yeah, that's for the introduction. So ladies, again, how are you? How's New York today? Tell us a bit about what we're missing there.
It's actually a sunny day today. So we've been, I think, a little up and down, but feels like we're hitting spring finally. So,
and I think we're both excited to be like sitting with each other because it's still like, you know, I don't know if it'll ever be like everyone's back in the office, but we are two people who don't like sitting in isolation as we have been. So we're just like bouncing off of each other's energy too.
And I think it's actually really nice that the two of you have joined together. You know, in such interviews, we usually used to see people in those different boxes and Zoom, but the fact that you're together is actually nice. And if I may say, you actually know each other, you're good friends with each other. So that's even
we're holding hands under the table here. So.
Don't worry, it's not going to be scary. Awesome. So, you know, today we're going to talk about a few topics. We're going to talk about business, about life, about the combination of working hard and playing hard, which is something you both know very well. And I would love to learn from you how to work hard and play hard, but also about life and life challenges. And you will both share some of it. Let me introduce you just a bit, and then of course over to you. So Amy is the global head of business, manages the aspect of YouTube Brand Connect revenue generation and business operation, which is actually YouTube's in-house branded content platform, offering 100% creator-driven branded content at scale and leveraging the best Google Insights and measurement to drive revolutionary results. You have joined Google in 2011. You've held a lot of different roles that helped actually Google evolve and touched each and every one of us. You've worked with amazing companies like Warner, Elektra, Atlantic, media sales at both American Express Publishing and Times, Turner Broadcasting, the Walt Disney Company. Oh my God. You live in New Jersey. That's insane. You live in New Jersey, and Amy, again, loves building new businesses and developing high-performing teams while helping some of the world's largest brands win in video. And I can't wait to hear more from you. But since we have Shari, I'll share a bit about Shari so everybody will know more. So Shari is a large enterprise account executive at Slack, which we all know and love. She's responsible of some of the company's largest customers and opportunities. She joins the organization with a proven track record of executing the full sales cycles from lead to close. Her expertise, which you'll see in a minute, is forming external relationships with senior levels and leaders and decision makers, externally and simultaneously cultivating the best-in-class cross-functional teams internally. She worked also for amazing companies as LinkedIn, Career Builder, advocated for clients like New York Life, Bed Bath & Beyond's Kimberly Clark. She lives in Brooklyn. She's passionate about anchoring in her clients' business to align solutions and creating a fun and inclusive environment for her teammates, colleagues, and customers to thrive in. That was me. Now over to you, ladies. I would like to know a bit more about you and specifically what attracted each of you to the corporate sales world.
You want me to
kick
kick it off? It's really interesting. I don't know if it's still true, but like a really, really small number of universities actually have sales as a field of study. And of course, that's interesting because sales is responsible for the revenue generation for organizations, obviously an important role. So I think when I was done with school and, thinking about what to do, there's really like two things. The first is, this is like over 20 years ago when people used to go to the office every day from like at least 9 to 5. And I was just like, how do I not have to sit in the same space every day, all day? How can I like travel and run around and do things and still make money, right? And so that's one thing. And then the other thing is maybe, it's obviously in our personalities as sales professionals, but also I think, all through high school and college, I was a waitress and a server. And right there, like the harder you work, the more money you make, right? And so that always made sense to me. And sales is like a natural progression of that. Like the stronger your output, the more effort you put out there, the more you get back in. And so I, for the way that I hustle, I want it to be tied to the money that I make as well. So I would say those are my main two attractions to the corporate world.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. I would say for me, it, kind of started with how I grew up. My father was an entrepreneur, started several businesses. And my mother really instilled the importance of financial independence in me. And, I think also combined, like what Shari was saying, the type of people we are, my personality is very driven. I think I've always had that hustle, energy about me. I even think back to when I was little and, starting small businesses within my neighborhood, selling my flowers from my yard to my neighbor next door, whatever it was. It was always that hustle mentality. So I think all of those things, like my upbringing and just my drive and passion for what I do, really attracted me to the corporate world. I saw a lot of opportunity there, and wanted to be a part of these big names that are a part of our everyday lives.
Yeah, I guess also like connection. I think like my parents always show us these pictures from when we were little, like my sister's with like pets and she still is like helping, people to this day. And mine is like, I'm on the phone. Like I want to be like connected to people and talking to people and moving around. And so like, this is a great like vehicle for that, really.
Yeah. And it's interesting because I do believe, I think as one, that salespeople there is a certain personality. And I think, if I look at the two of you, it seems like, I'm right in a way. There's kind of hustle personality, like people loving personality that can sell actually.
That's us.
Definitely.
Now, there is I think it's even a myth, but when I look at Israeli startup scene, there is also a lot of drive here, a lot of companies that are no names, and they want to address the US market. The US market is the holy grail for us. And the main problem for startups is that the fact that there are no names. So they're trying, to one by one win some contracts with US. Obviously, Fortune 500 would be our main goal, but with different US companies, corporations. And there's always this feeling that since you don't have the network, you're not American, you have a weird Israeli name like Liron or something, you're being perceived differently, and it's harder for you to sell when you're not as established and when you're not a big company. And I want to ask you, is that true, or is it just a myth that it's easier to sell? Because it seems like it's easier to sell when you're the Slacks, the YouTubes, the LinkedIn of the world. And I would like to get your take on that.
It's interesting because we were like thinking about these questions together, and you'll see like I'll answer like it's like two parts, because the first part is it is more difficult when you're in a less known or a not known company. It's more difficult to like get the phone call to get in the room. Like I can talk about that a little bit, but the second part, once you're there, which Amy, I think you'll talk about, is like, it's actually more difficult because of the expectations. So I started working at LinkedIn in 2015. So by that point, I had already been working for a couple of other organizations. I mean, I'd been working for like 15 years. And you're right, like when I got to LinkedIn, I felt like I had worked my butt off for 15 years to earn the privilege of using that name. Because when you call somewhere and say like you're calling from LinkedIn, like they take the call. However, what I do with that call once I'm in the room is all the stuff that I learned for the first 15 years when I didn't work at LinkedIn, right? Like there's so much, and we can, like, if anybody has questions or wants to talk about it in more detail, but I feel like that's really where I cut my teeth. That's where I learned. That's like where the grit comes from. And that's where, you know, I was at Career Builder for like 7 years, which is maybe lesser known in Israel, but was like a pretty prominent company here. But I think like when I started at Career Builder, it wasn't as known. And before that, I worked at a custom publication for plus size women that was only sold in like 4 local stores. But I got national advertisers like Unilever in there. And that's like purely by like hustle and by knowing the customer even better than you know your own brand. So we can like go on a whole tangent about that. But I would say that like, yeah, the privilege of calling from a known place makes it easier to get the call. And again, but Amy can talk about like, the thing is like, once you do walk into a meeting from like LinkedIn or Slack or Google, it's harder, I think.
You still need to walk the walk in a way, or work.
Yeah, I can speak to it from a little bit of a different side. I mean, every company, you know, since I was, you know, working in my town, growing up or whatever, my main corporate, you know, career has always been with bigger name companies. So there are teams that I've worked on that were, you know, I always look for like a startup within a big company. So sometimes those calls are a little bit more challenging, right? You have the name behind you, but it's still new business. So I did a lot of that when, you know, I was first coming up. And you know, like Shari said, I think, you know, having a big name behind you, yes, you're going to get the phone call. You already probably have the contacts because they're working with you in they're working with you in some capacity. However, I do think when you walk in that door or you pick up that phone, there's a lot more work that needs to be done and a lot more expectation coming from that name. So they're not expecting, you know, just a name to call. And I think, you know, there's a lot more that goes into what you're bringing them, what you're offering them. And that's where I think, you know, some of that, you know, some of that more hustle is, you know, expected and more of that preparation and caliber, because really you are the face of the company. So that, you know, that puts a lot.
You are LinkedIn or you are Walt Disney or Google.
That's correct. You are representing your company.
So what would you think? What would you prefer? Would you prefer to be the big company? And again, that's a lot of your experience, or the smaller company that the underdog?
Fun. Well, listen, sorry. I
was gonna say, I think both are fun. Like having the big name behind you is great, you know, that, but you still have to, it's still all about relationship making, right? It doesn't matter whether you're from the big company or from the small company, it's about making that connection with that person and what value you're bringing to them and that exchange, right? Like that's what it's all about. So I don't necessarily think the name is as much as your approach and how you build that relationship.
And I think there's actually benefits to both. Like, and first of all, like I just joined Slack less than 7 months ago. And even though Slack is like an awesome technology that a lot of people know, it doesn't mean that people are, you know, like we love it personally. Like I'm on a Slack moms group with the schools, but that doesn't mean that organizations want to spend $20 million with me just because I'm calling from Slack, right? So a couple of things like, and also at Slack, I'm just doing new business, which is a departure and a lot more challenging than when I was at LinkedIn, when I was like managing and growing relationships. And so I feel like, you know, at Slack, in some ways, I'm like resharpening those skills from before of like, how do you get the attention of people? How do you get in front of them? How do you get them to open your email or your LinkedIn message? And, you know, if any, like I saw some questions, like we could talk about that a little bit. But I also think like, yeah, everybody wants the Fortune 500 companies as clients, but don't forget that like Fortune 500 companies, you know, can take you 3 years to get to the CEO. Whereas like, if you're dealing with a 40-person company and you have like the right solution, you can get to the CEO the next day. You can make $1 million deal sometimes like a lot faster. So it's just about like wherever you are, like capitalizing on what the opportunity is there, because there's awesome aspects to like anywhere that you are. New business, growing business, small company, big company, like it's all fun. It's all opportunity.
Yeah. And I think what you just said about the big company or the small company and the time frame that it can take, that's a very important note, because again, as far as I see it, you know, as coming from Israel, even though we are the startup nation and we have a lot of, or I don't know if a lot of, but we have our prestige around the world, still everybody wants to nail this big name, you know, in their belt. So it's not only the big names. Now, following to what you just said, you know, no matter if you're big or a small company, eventually, as you said on our preliminary call as well, you need to earn the right to be in the room. And I want to kind of drill down into more specific examples, if you don't mind, about maybe names or even sentences that are unique to you, that enable you to build that bond or credibility with prospects and make the sales progress, or, you know, or specifically again in the online communication world. So if you can get some of your tips and tactics to doing so.
Yeah, certainly. I'm happy to take this one first. So I think, you know, one of the big things that I do, like I said before, I mean, there's definitely things to consider, right? Like there's, you know, we work with global markets, and there's different cultural, language, barriers, customs that are different, right? So understanding some of those things, and, you know, Shari and I were actually talking about this one before, and really
For example,
through, like,
should we say like what we were saying? Just I think Israelis are less likely to like maybe start a call with like all of the small talk. So Amy like works across globes, right? Is that what you were?
Yeah. So I think like just starting the call with, you know, like a how are you, right? Just trying to get like not jumping right into business. Really, it's all about empathy and forming that bond. And, you know, I think that's even more challenging and more noticeable in today's environment where everything is on video. We're not seeing people in person anymore. So it's a different environment to build that connection, but it's still the same thing, right? Like we're all dealing with humans, and it's really getting to know each other on that more personal level, finding what connections you have with that person. And that empathetic bond is so critical. And I would say just like starting off the call with like, how are you? Right? Or remembering something about that person's life, or like, how was that weekend concert you said you were going to? Those are like the ways to be able to form those connections in today's world.
And Shari, sorry, I'll just mention, because you said about Israelis, and obviously you have some Israeli connections. So, you know, I know that you know a lot about Israelis, but yeah, if you could.
No, I was actually going to say though, I think like if we're talking about the step before you get on the call of like, you know, earning the right and having like a human connection and understanding the cultural nuances is important. But if we're thinking about like, how do we even get the call? I really think from the first day, like I've started working, it's like, again, whichever company you represent, when you're trying to get in front of somebody else, it has to be about them. So I'll give you like a quick little story. When I worked at Career Builder, which really was like an amazing, like the best salespeople I know to today, like kind of a lot of them came from there. I had a company called Avon, like you guys probably know, like the Avon ladies, you know, like that sell makeup and stuff, but they're, you know, they are maybe like a 20,000 person company, but they have over 1 million like independent Avon ladies, right? So all the people before me had always called and been like, hey, we want to talk to you about like your business, about your corporate. What I did, I became an Avon lady. So I found like a local Avon sales leader in New York. I started going to her meetings all the time. I started listening to the little Avon ladies with their amazing stories of like putting their kids through college. I mean, this like, so by the time I started like reaching out to executives at Avon, first of all, that's like earning the right. Like I spent time in the field, understanding the business. As I was at these meetings, like executives from Avon were like, hey ladies, we're selling this like new product or that new product. So I got to meet executives. So then when I started reaching out to like sales and marketing, I was like, hey, I'm an Avon lady. I also work at this company and I know how to help your business.
I think
That's the
Shari
key.
touches on a really important thing there, and that's credibility, right? You have credibility, you're being honest with your clients, you're bringing them stuff that's actually going to help their business and not just trying to fit something in that's not going to fit.
Yeah.
That's definitely,
So you have to,
important.
right,
Credibility.
like you have to do your homework and you have to be rooted in whoever you're talking to. And especially if you're in a startup with a really small like sales force, you know, you might have like 100 or 200 clients and it's really hard to do like that kind of due diligence.
Yeah.
So you got to like prioritize your accounts. You have to figure out like who gets the most of your attention, who gets the least. But for those like big bets or whatever you want to call them, like the work has to be done of like really understanding them and getting to them with a critical message about their business, wherever you're calling from. That's like the key that opens the doors.
Yeah. So as Amy said, to build this credibility, and Shari, as you said, that you actually you were in their shoes. So it was kind of easier to build this credibility. Now we have a lot of questions here on this topic, so I will address them later. I'll just add to what Evelyn asked. She asked Amy, so when you say this, how are you? How do you make sure this is authentic and not just another, you know, tick in the box?
Yeah, it is probably not just necessarily like, how are you? You know, I think it's, you know, understanding like where they're calling from. Is this some of the things I said before, like remembering things about that person? What did they do? What did they say they were doing this weekend? Or asking them, hey, what are you doing this upcoming weekend? And, you know, I think there it's about finding those connections, and that's how you make it a little bit more authentic.
It's easier now, right? Like if you're talking to someone for the first time, you can see like where they've worked, you can see if they've written an article, if they've like, you know, you find something. But I do think like culturally, that's a big, we know a lot of like Israelis that are in New York, and as like brilliant as you all are, I think that there is like a cultural shift of like, you know, the water cooler of like this like BSing of like, how was your weekend? Like, did you watch the Super Bowl? Like that is considered, I think for some people maybe on this call, like wasted time, but I've paid attention. Like most of my Zooms with internal and external clients, they're 30 minutes, and the first 9 or 10 is like not on business, even if it's an initial call, whether we're talking about like, you know, you feel it out. I mean, it could be like the serious political climate, it could be your kids in the background, but like something is, you know, there has to be something personal if you're reaching out, I feel like, to American business people to get them to like chit chat with you.
I even have to tell you, so I'm not a big sports fan, but I for 3 years, I used to work in the sports innovation industry. And by knowing a bit more about what's happening in the sports world, I felt like I'm, you know, getting an access into the boys club, or I'm able to talk with a lot of people, let alone American, in more, you know, just create this bond way better because I had some idea about sports. So that's a great example of, you know, as you mentioned, Shari. And Shari, you said that you just, like in the last few months, you moved to Slack after working for LinkedIn for many years, and which, as you just earlier said, it's naturally presents new challenges, new opportunities, and some new skills that you can now use and leverage. And Slack, of course, is the platform that connects every aspect of the enterprise. So it considers as a complicated sale. You need to buy in a lot of people to get this through. So my question to you, which is actually a question that was raised a lot in the women in business community, is how do you start from scratch? I mean, meaning like, how do you learn about your organization? And you mentioned that a bit, but what actually you're looking for? How do you detect decision makers? How can you know the value to give them? So these are a lot of questions, but if you can possibly give like some answers to that.
No, I'm happy to answer that, because I do think it's much different coming into like my role where companies don't already do business with us. I'm reaching out to people who have maybe not talked to us before, have declined to speak to us before. And you're right, like to get a company to spend millions of dollars on a software that they didn't even like know they needed, it's complicated. There's a lot of stakeholders. So I think like a few things, like number one, this is like for me, there's so much to learn when you're new at an organization, but I need to move and learn at the same time, right? So like Slack is giving me like all of the tools and the training on like how the technology works and like, right? But I can't forget that I've been doing this for 20 years and I know how to sell and stuff. So like, as I'm learning and doing the internal trainings, like I'm starting to build account plans. Now, if you work at a big company like a LinkedIn or a Salesforce, there might be like a template of an account plan, but you probably like did this too, like earlier in my career, and still I will build myself one, right? I used to have it in like thick binders with like actual paper, but you go, I mean, everything is available to you right now. So like I said, you look at these companies, you know, that are whether like the whole world is your territory or you've been assigned a certain territory, you prioritize them. Who has like the most employees or the problem that your organization can solve the best? Like, you know, look at the top 10 of those. And then for those, listen to their earnings call, like find, you know, identify like the top 10 executives there, Google alerts, listen. I mean, we have everything at our fingertips right now. We can read their thoughts on things. We can see who they follow on LinkedIn and like become experts in their business, in them. And then when you reach out to them, you have something to say. And I know I'm like beating a dead horse here, but you have to be talking about them when you call them. Like nobody wants me to call them and talk about like Slack. And, you know, I have to earn that by doing a Slack demo, which they're only going to let me do if I know what's going on in their business, the challenges they have. And so like, I really think you got to like put your head down, you got to hustle, and you have to make yourself like a strategic account plan that puts out who you need to meet, the, you know, the time frame, and then match like their executive drivers that they put out publicly to what your company can do. And when you know all that, you'll be like bursting to get moving. And then like people, that's authentic. And then people will answer your emails and your phone calls and your LinkedIn messages.
So Amy is in the position today that she's managing teams, and you are a startup within Google. So you have teams of sellers and content executors, and so you also need to sell your division internally, and in a way, and to get the support you need. So what are your main tips to managing relationships within Google and get the support you need to scale your own division?
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
That is very helpful. And yes, I can definitely speak to that. I mean, I've been at Google for over 10 years. So I think, you know, a lot of that, you know, I've worked with a lot of these people since, you know, 2011, like the same group, you know, since 2011. And we've all like moved to different parts of the organization and have taken different roles within this 10 plus years. And I think as you know, your networks grow and move, it grows your overall network. So it helps, you know, knowing a lot of people across the organization in different areas. And in addition to that, I think it's, you know, it's always a best practice. Shari really touched on this, but how can you help them? So typically, if I'm reaching out to someone that I want help with, I want to think about, is it mutually beneficial? Like, how might I be able to help them in some way when I'm asking for something too? And it's also really important to listen, you know, to really listen and understand what are they trying to do. You know, to really understand. And I think this goes to a lot of what Shari was talking about too, about, you know, how you sell in things to your clients. You're doing the same thing internally, right? And it's really listening, understanding them as your internal client, and how can you best integrate into what they're doing? What is their goal? What is their vision? And how can you help support that? Because at the end of the day, you know, if you're not fitting in, or you're trying to, you know, fit in something that doesn't make sense, it's not going to work. So you really want to be very thoughtful about the business, thoughtful about what their team is trying to do, and then go to them with the appropriate ask. And you know, it's raising awareness across teams, and that's, you know, and that continues to scale the team.
So basically, it's really kind of same but different, as they say in Thailand. I mean, it's really about, again, giving the same human approach to either clients or internal, eventually to.
I call them all clients. You have
Yeah.
your external clients and you have your internal clients.
Yeah, we're serving and being served in a way by, by many of them. So, and again, in this sense, you know, some of our audiences here are SDRs or, you know, salespeople. They have managers like such as yourself, for example. And I would like to approach this angle for a bit. So team management, whether it's a big team like Amy's or SDRs for Shari's team, what is one thing that helped you in team management, like that you wish you knew earlier on?
So you want me to start this? First of all, if there's any like business development or SDR people on the phone, when we get off later, Google BAFTA, BAFTA, BAFTA emails, because I had to reteach myself. Like it's just like a concept of what to include in like an introductory outreach. And this is like a side note. So I can't even remember the name of the company, but you know, since I work at Slack, we don't really use email anymore. It's antiquated. It's not really effective. It's not really a great way for us to connect with people, but some awesome dude has been sending me emails with like a video of him. Like he sends me like one a week. And like last night I was like, dude, you got me. Like I'll talk. I can't, like, all I can do is like introduce him to someone at Slack. If you guys, I don't have like buying power for the organization, but like this guy is like, he got my number. He knows what I do as a salesperson. You know what I mean? Like I respect that. And like, so do all business people, even if you're from like a 25-person company in Israel. So that's first of all, BAFTA emails. Second of all, I think something really important, and maybe this is more relevant, I don't know, in larger organizations, but the thing is like, we're salespeople and I have like someone like Amy, like that I align to, but then I have like a BDR or or an SDR, and they're in like this line of business. And then once I sell an account, I have like a customer success manager and she reports into this organization. And then I have like an analytics guy or a sales engineer. So we're all actually part of different orgs expected to support the same client. So I tripped up on this for a couple of years because I'm driven by sales and like I have my drivers and my metrics. And I feel like after I finally understood that the group that is like, that I'm working together with to support one client, we all have to feel like one team, even though internally we're pretty siloed. So I start like every quarter and every year with the cross-functional team. And I make sure I understand for every person on the team that I'm on, I understand like, what are your personal goals and what are your professional goals, right? So professional goals, like I want to get a promotion this year. Awesome. Now, every time they do something for me, I can send out an email or a Slack about how awesome they are and what they've done. Personally, you want to buy a house? Awesome. Now you're more motivated to make more money. And so like, I can drive you that way. Like some people actually want to work less or leave every day by 3. Like I need to understand how everybody around me works so that I can support that and get them like excited to support me so we can all win. So that's like my vibe.
Yeah. No, that's very helpful. And Amy, what about you?
Yeah, for sure. I think I definitely agree with all of that. And I would say, in addition to that, like really, I think it starts with having a clear vision and goal for the team, because, you know, when you don't have a clear vision and you don't know what you're working towards, one, there's not that passion there, right? Like, everybody should we should be passionate and love what we're doing. And that's the excitement. And that's why it's like fun what we're doing. If you're not passionate about what you're doing, you know, you need to find your niche. So I would say, you know, having that clear vision is so critical, so the team all knows at least what they're working towards. And that's a unified front, right? Being able to then empower your team to meet those goals. You know, you want to help them grow and help them, you know, push their boundaries, and not micromanaging. Like micromanaging is not something that's fun for anybody. It's not fun for the manager, and it's not fun for the team member. Yeah, it's not. It's not fun. No. So how can you empower, support, get them the right resources to be able to do it on their own? You know, if there is a gap there, what is that gap, and how can you as a manager help support that? And I also think too, you know, coaching your team. I mean, that all comes from this too. It's, you know, when maybe you're not seeing the right answer or the right solution, how do you coach them to find that answer without giving the answer? So, you know, I think that, and finally, I think too, you know, really just making sure, like as a team, that everybody is being heard, everybody's sharing their thoughts on different things, because I think it's so important to be able to see, you know, problems and solutions through different lenses versus one point of view, because that, you know, that's not how we get the best answers. So I think all of those things are really important.
And I think what you just said is so critical, especially when, you know, in the hybrid world today, where, you know, some days I guess you work from home or from office, obviously to connect them, as I like what you say, Amy, to like the main goal, the main, I mean, you know, vision for everyone, and really make sure everybody is seen. It's like eventually it all comes down to basics, right? To the basics human relationship, and that's how you sell, and that's how you get things going. And
absolutely,
so simple, but it's still something we need to teach people. So
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, you got to know your shit too, though.
And especially when it doesn't come naturally, you know?
Yeah, it doesn't come naturally for everyone. So the next question or the next part would be more about you and about your amazing, you know, the fact that you, as you said before, you work hard, you play hard. But before that, I asked Shari the permission to show Shari in action, if you don't mind. So I want to show you, everyone. This is like Shari in a typical day when, you know, if you want to share anything about it, Shari.
That's awesome. That's Dylan. Yeah, listen, it's different now, right?
Yeah.
Like, I feel like when I started working, I think I sound like so old, but when I started working, it was like you got to the office every day at 8:30, you had to stay till 5:30. And even like, you know, obviously COVID changed things a lot, but even like before COVID, you can keep that up. It's really cute. Like even before COVID though, like things changed, right? Like we know that we have to make, hopefully you guys all being in like these emerging tech companies in a place as progressive as Israel, like we all know there's like an emphasis now on the whole person and your well-being. And so listen, I would say like Liron, you know, I guess like almost 10 years ago now, like I worked so hard, I worked so much. I was at the airport like 3 times, I don't know, all the time, 5 in the morning. I had managed a team. I was burnt out. Like I actually like, after like thinking about it for a long time, I took a year off, I traveled like, but I feel like when I came back with a baby, you know, I was different too, like, and the world is different now. And it's totally, it's a mixture of me knowing it's okay to be like, hey, I don't have, like my nanny couldn't come today, but it's a really important day in the office. And I'm like strapping my baby on and coming in. And I know that it's like, okay with the company. And I also know that I can do both. Like I'm totally confident in both those things. And they're not like 2 different things, right? Like I can't concentrate on work if I left my baby home alone and I can't concentrate, you know, I don't feel like I'm taking the best care of my baby if I'm missing like a really important day at work. And so like feeling like, you know, Amy was talking about like the kind of place she's trying to make, like, you know, hopefully we all have leaders that are making this environment for us where like our whole self comes. And like, for me, one of the beautiful things about sales before this new world and the whole world now is that like I can do my job from 10 to noon and then from 3 to 5 and then at 8 p.m. and I can be like productive and successful as it fits into my life and not try to fit my life around the rest of it, which is just making me way better and happier than I was in my 20s and 30s when I was like just strung out from every angle.
Your work.
And like I couldn't do anything, you know, like, so now I feel like I still struggle with feeling guilty about stuff, but I think people who are hopefully are starting to work now are like, oh, I can go to the post office and I'm not like a bad employee.
It's like a different environment now, and work is different.
Yeah, it's better because half of the population is women, and we used to lose half of the women. Like once anybody wanted to like have children or like do anything else, they had to leave the workforce. And so now we don't have to. And like, you know, like it's cute having your baby at work, but it doesn't like slow you down. So whatever.
So, you know, you mentioned before that you are like a group of friends, but both of you specifically as good friends, you work hard, you develop your career, but you also play hard. And, you know, you also need to address sometimes life challenges. And as the golden question, as I asked it about the balance between life and work and some, again, unexpected things. So Amy, I would like to get your story and take on that, please.
Absolutely. First, I was going to say we're both extremists. We work extremely hard and then we party really hard. We make sure we have fun both ways.
But it's interesting, right? The people usually that work the hardest like are the funnest.
So it's funny, like thinking about work-life balance, it's always like a term, right, that we've been using for a long time and thinking through, and it's definitely become more and more prominent, like brought to the forefront when thinking about these things. And, you know, I look back at my whole career and honestly, I can just say, I think it was within the last 2.5 years that I actually figured this out. You know, I used to say that pivotal point in my life was when I had my first child. Like I went from, you know, hanging out, and this is when I was back at Disney, but like, you know, hanging out, talking to people all day, but then I'd be at the office till like 7 or 8 because I needed time to also get my work done. And I had no, you know, I wasn't going home to anybody. So once I had my son, I said that was a pivotal point because I made sure I like maximized my time in the office. I didn't chit chat as much, and I got home to make sure I was there for my son before he went to bed. So I used to think that was my pivotal point in figuring out work-life balance. But like I said, it was actually the last 2.5 years. Back in the summer of 2019, I found out I was pregnant with our third child. And then about a month later, found out I had a diagnosis for breast cancer. So this was obviously a lot of things coming together, and it was very difficult to deal with. I had a whole treatment plan that I had to go through with chemo and whatnot. And also think about this, you know, having a baby at the same time.
And COVID.
Yes, and I had COVID way in the beginning of you know, my baby was born, our daughter, and she's very healthy and beautiful, and everything worked out good. She was born the beginning of April, and that was right when COVID shut down the world, and I tested positive at the hospital before giving birth. So it was a lot, and I ended up during this period. What I'm trying to say is like I did realize I had to take off from work. And this was as the type of person, like an A-type person who's always worked, who's always hustled, like this is part of your DNA. And that was the hardest thing for me, was to understand how to step back from working, not feeling guilty, because that guilt was always there when you're focusing on one thing or the other, and how to just focus on yourself. So I think over the last 2.5 years, like I've really learned how important that self-care is for you, to do the best for you, to bring the best of you to the world, right? Like when you're trying to do too many things, you're not the best you. And I've really started focusing on, you know, not so much as multitasking. It's not multitasking, it's I don't even know the word. I think
like buckets of time.
Yeah, buckets of time. Like okay, I know in the morning from this time to this time, it's all about, getting my kids ready, school, etc. I'm not looking at emails or anything. Maybe I looked at them when I first got up to make sure nothing's, going on that's crazy. But that is my block. That's what I'm doing. Then I come home, and then I know from this time to this time I have meetings and I'm working, and that's what I'm doing. I'm not trying to do anything else, and I'm really focusing on that. And then when my kids come home, we have dinner, and that's family time. So I really focus on that. And for me, that's worked. I think, personally, I'm sure we have research that we can look at whatnot, but for me personally, I feel that the old behavior of multitasking, it was always a good thing to do. And if you multitask, this is good. But for me, really just focusing on those key moments and including yourself in those moments too. When do you get to 100% focus on yourself and take that time for yourself? And it really just like I said, just really brings the best of you back to whatever you're doing.
I love what you said about bringing the best of you, and thankfully you're okay, you're back, everything is
cancer-free for over 2 years now.
Amazing.
Yes, thank you.
And I want to thank you for sharing this. Obviously, it's a part of your life. It's part of your journey. It's a part of, everything that you do. And you also communicate that on an Instagram that I've actually been following you a few months ago before I even knew who you are, and on YouTube. So I'm going to share now the links for those who actually want to follow.
I was just going to do that. Amy's beautiful struggle.
And I can just say it to voice over it. So the website is www.amysbeautifulstruggle.com. And the Instagram handle as well as the YouTube page are both Amy's Beautiful Struggle.
So follow her. And so we're going to address more questions soon, guys. So if you want to, we have a few questions lining up and in the Q&A. And before that, just to I want to play a short game with you, because I know you love to have fun and you love the good vibe. So I'm going to share a few words, and I want you to please, a few concepts, and I want you to say the first thing that comes to mind when you hear this concept. You guys, attendees, please write your questions. We're going to address them in a second. So are you ready?
Are you ready? Visual?
No, she's going to say a word.
I'm going to say a word.
Okay. At the same time, I'm sorry.
No, I'm going to say a word, and you're going to tell me what comes to your mind.
At the same time.
Okay.
So first sentence or a few words would be traveling for work.
Fun.
Oh, good. Personal brand.
Hustle. Hustle. Hustler.
After she said, I feel this. Yes, that makes sense.
Hustler.
It's hard to come out with
hustling. All right, the next one.
Very hustler.
Yeah, legends.
Legends.
The third one, video calls at home with kids.
Crazy.
Part of life.
Crazy part of life. Women's Month.
Strong.
It's not 1 month is not enough.
We need all the 12 of them.
We need all the months.
And one last word would be love.
Yes.
Happy.
Yes, and happy. Amazing. Good. So after we learn more about you, Amy and Shari, about your life, about your career, about a lot of things that you're doing, let's address some of the questions that people shared. So one would be, so there were quite a few questions about the actual sales process. So Karen asked, when we talked about addressing you different clients, then how do you get them to pick up the phone and talk to you when you call from a company that is not well known, like a software company? How do you get them to answer a call or open an email when you're an unknown company?
So because I've been doing this a bit lately, I think, again, you have to understand the company that you're calling more than your own company, right? I mean, think about it. Like if I call Liron and I'm like, how are you doing? How did your podcast go today? Like you're working on your own business. Like she wants to talk to me a lot more than if I call her and I say, hey, I have a crazy day at work and I'm so busy and I'm doing this and I'm doing that and I'm doing like, who cares? Right. So you have to like think like, so what, who cares? So really, it's just like so much, to get like one email answered, it's like you might have to send out a lot. And it's really hard if you're going after a whole organization that has thousands of people to put this much care into each one that you send out. But it's true. Like, do you answer? Like, I know like on LinkedIn, when someone's like, hey, Shari, your background is impressive, I want to talk to you. And they say stuff from my profile, that's a lot more meaningful when it says like, hey, salespeople in New York, you should join my company. So it's being like really thoughtful, and there's no like shortcut for that. And it's really hard work, and it's not like glamorous or fun or anything. But I think like the example I gave before, like there's this guy, I mean, his name is Dylan, Dillon, and he emails me once a week. And he's like, Shari, I know in your new role at Slack, like you're dealing with this. And he sends me like this video and like, he knows what I'm doing and he knows what I need. And like, I don't remember the name of his company, but I have a call with him next week because he just like really wanted to talk to me, and like he wore me down. And I, like sometimes I've seen people like, I've just connected, someone I work with just sent out like to the CMO of a huge company, like, hey, I like quote someone back to themselves, like read an article that they wrote. All you have to do is Google someone, look for like this person's quote in the last year, and then Google, send them an email, call them, LinkedIn. Hey, I was really touched or provoked by this comment that you made, because this is a problem that we solve for. Do you have 10 minutes? And then follow it up just with a calendar invite. People accept those all the time. They don't even know what's going on. Like there's like a million different ways, but you really like, that's one where like, there's just not like a shortcut to putting your head down, understanding their business and understanding them, and just like pounding them kind of.
Yeah. I think definitely agree with those points as well. I think though, when it's like a cold call or a cold email, you really want to highlight, and the first thing you want to get out is what is the value that you're bringing that person, right? I think even like starting with the like, some of the other stuff, like headline, like I can save you X amount of dollars. I'm going to pay attention. Or, I think it's all about like understanding the business, understanding that person, and thinking through like, why should they care, and telling them like, this is why you should care about this, because I see you have these issues and this is how we can solve, right? So really thinking about the customer, taking the time, personalizing it. And I think too, I think it was brought up, like, do you answer all your LinkedIn messages, or do I look at all my emails? I don't. It's almost impossible. But what I will say is, when somebody has sent me a LinkedIn message or an email that brings value to me, when I need it, I will remember that email, and then I'll search for it and go back to it. So it's not that, maybe I didn't get back right away, but like, oh, I'm having this problem, but I remember this person had this service. I'm going to look it up and I'm going to reach out to them. So again, I think having that value in there, and why should that person care, is really that, most important piece.
And one more like tactical thing that I've just seen work, which I just learned like this year, is like, if in the subject line, you put like, can I put it in the chat here? Like, I'll do it to like me and Liron. Like if the subject line, like if I were to send Liron an email and this was the subject line, you'll be like, what? It's personal, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know, like I've seen that work a bunch.
So that's actually interesting, because this is like more of what's happening, let's say in the US market for us Israelis. I mean, to kind of know these little shticks, let's call it that would be great. Like how to write this, this topic. And Amy, I like what you said about kind of a guiding question to always think, why should they care? This should be definitely a question that you should ask yourself before sending an email. And There is another question. I think we kind of answered it. You kind of answered it, but I'll just address that.
Look, sorry, that's a good nuance though also, and especially, you know, like English isn't your first language and you're sending a note, like any note that starts with like, I want to set up a meeting. If I want to meet, it would be great if we would spend time together. Like great for who? Like not great, you know, like if I want to meet with Amy, I'm not going to say, Amy, I think it would really be great if you let me tell you all about Slack.
Right.
What I would say is, Amy, I understand like in your role for the past 12 months, overseeing a group of 13 people, but being the liaison between 24 other groups, you don't all have one streamlined communication, and 7 other companies in your field that use Slack saw like a 25% increase.
She's selling me. She can't stop.
Yeah, no, but right, like that makes.
So are you buying? Is there a deal? YouTube and Slack. Can we get some message out of this event? Yeah, so you're saying, Shari, what's in it for them? What's in it for the other two?
So what? Who cares?
Yeah.
Yep.
Now we're about to reach the top of the hour, so just a few more points. So Nirit actually said, what would be kind of a first step? And I think you kind of gave a lot of good examples about some first steps and some cold calling. And I would like to ask what Karen said about the kind of the American culture in terms of cold calling. So is it okay to call people? Like, would you?
Happens all the time.
Listen,
like, would you feel comfortable about it?
No, nobody's comfortable doing it. And that's why the few people who do it get better results. Okay. Like nobody's comfortable picking up the phone and calling an executive. And it's happened to me and it's happened to everyone that I picked up the phone and called an executive and he answered. And I was like,
right, like what do I do now?
Oh my God,
I don't know. Like, I just thought
really
yeah. So like, but listen, I think like some of the thing, and for especially like business development and for sales, is the reason we do this is like, you got to get like, it's like 50 no's before you hear a yes. The rejection is not personal. So if I write someone an email and I see a response or I see like, I will text someone, like they put their information out there, like, you know, even, I don't know. So I just think like most people, it's so easy to hide behind like email and hide behind your computer, like pick up your phone, it's your cell phone. Like I recently just had a guy who refused to like answer, like, I don't know, like he doesn't want to talk to me. Like, I don't care. You know what I mean? I just like texted him and I was like, are you really never going to talk to me? And he wrote back, fine. So like, I don't know, like, you know, put yourself out there. But I think if anything, that's the awesome thing about Israeli culture, right? Like you guys, you have the chutzpah, the beit tzala.
Ladies, so let's talk a bit about fun before we wrap up this event. So what's the next or the most recommended fun thing you can recommend us here to do while we work hard, and how can we play hard?
Listen, I'm going to Costa Rica in 2 weeks.
I was just going to say travel, have fun, see new places, explore.
I really regret, like I regret like all of those years that I didn't understand, especially if you're in like a sales role, like you hit your number and you make, it doesn't matter. Like I was like nervous to take days off, nervous to leave early. Like it didn't get me anywhere, you know, like you hit your number because you do the right thing. So I just think like if your gut's telling you stuff, if there's things you want to do, like just do them. You're more successful when you're happy.
That's right.
Have a good time.
Wow.
Not that serious.
So much amazing, you know, insights and you know, realization that you just shared with us. So I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. Again, for me, it's been a great honor to interview amazing women as yourself, from first of all, personally, and of course, professionally. Amy, I want to thank you so much for sharing your insane story and all the health and all the best. And I really encourage our attendees here to visit your social media and learn more, get more of you and from you.
Follow.
Thanks for being interested in our perspective here, guys.
Yes. And thank you, Lerone, for asking us to be here and inviting us. It's definitely a great honor. Thank you.
Same here. And I just added Shari's information as well. Thank you. Toda rabba, as we say, wishing you a wonderful rest of the day and happy Women's Month.
Laila tov. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.